My friend had been begging me to post my, well, sort of mind creepy encounter on this subreddit. Now that I am finished with my finals, I have time to share with you lovely people. I read through quite a few stories on here, and wow, they are creepy as heck. I think I might have slept with one eye open for a few nights, so thanks for that. Anyways, this happened almost 3 years ago. I had just graduated high school, and a guy from school invited our graduating class to their family's getaway home for a party. I went to a fairly small school. There were fewer than 100 students in my class, so it wasn't a big deal for him. Plus, most likely not everybody in our class was going to go. I am an average-looking female. I admit there is nothing special about my looks. I'm just a plain Jane. On the other hand, my dear friend Ashley was, and still is, drop-dead gorgeous. This situation was more frightening to her than me, considering she was the one tormented. It was nighttime, and the host of the party's house was so difficult to locate and a bit far away. GPS on my phone would direct me to weird locations, and I would miss a lot of my turns and force the GPS to reroute itself. Also, phone service was horrible, so calling for help was almost impossible. It was a bit aggravating, and I almost gave up on going to the party altogether, but I promised my best friend Sarah earlier that I would be there. So I'm driving around, and I spot a car parked on the side of the road with its hood up. A middle-aged guy literally walks in the middle of my lane and waves his hands in the air to stop me. I slow down to a stop and slightly roll my window down an inch or so, just in case he was dangerous. I was a paranoid person. The man came around to my window and blinded me with his flashlight. I could feel it moving all around my face, and it would move down towards the rest of my body as if he were inspecting me. I asked him kindly to not shine the flashlight in my face because I could not see. He apologized and said his friend was supposed to be stopping by to help him with his car and thought I was her. I was convinced he was telling the truth. His voice sounded friendly and honest. Since I was there, I told him I needed help with directions, and he seemed glad to help. I thanked him and went on my way. I finally made it on the road I needed to be on, and I was confident that I would make it to the house soon. I received an incoming call from Ashley, so I picked up the call. It was hard to understand her at times because of the bad reception, but I understood that she was lost and needed help with directions. Pull over to the side in hopes of keeping the little reception I had to help guide her. All the street names she told me were unfamiliar, and the ones I told her were unfamiliar to her. I assured her I was on the right path because I was on one of the roads I wrote down for the address earlier at home. I asked her to backtrack her steps and tell me all the roads she turned on. She began telling the names of roads, and I recognized them until she started mentioning the directions she said she got from a man on the side of the road. I told her that I got directions from the same one, but the directions he gave her were not the ones he gave me. I was confused. In fact, it was the complete opposite way. I told her not to worry, that I would drive back to find her and then she could follow me the rest of the way. She was satisfied with that plan, gave me the directions, and we hung up our call. So I make my way all the way back to the turn the man had told Ashley and followed the directions from there. The road was creepy and very dark. It was long and surrounded by a bunch of trees, and it felt like it was leading me further into nowhere. I tried calling Ashley, but I no longer had service. Before we hung up our call, I had to tell her to pull over somewhere safe until I found her. I drove some, and I was relieved to see backlights up ahead. Knowing it was Ashley's car, and as I got closer, I noticed that there were people surrounding the car, and I mean a lot, like at least 7. There was also a truck parked diagonally in front of her car as if it were blocking her from moving forward. I thought that it was strange. I wasn't too worried until I realized what those people were doing. They were banging on her car and trying to get inside. One of them even had a bat, and I could tell that they were all male. I quickly began to panic. I was frightened for my friend, and I had no idea how to help. I couldn't call the police because of the damn bad reception, and I was only one person. What could I do to stop a group of men? I finally came up with the only solution I could think of. I was going to run them over. That was literally the only thing I could think of at that moment. I was obviously terrified to do it, but I knew I had to do something. I stepped on my gas pedal so hard, and I began speeding towards them, honking my horn along the way. My heart was pounding so hard. They noticed me, and without even hesitating, they scattered like little scared animals. A few hurried into the trees, while the others fled to the truck and sped off. I came to a halt next to Ashley's car to let her know that it was me, and then she followed closely behind me as we made it back to town and parked in a safe location. I hugged her so hard. Her cheeks were drenched in tears. Her body was shaking uncontrollably. I've never seen anybody so terrified in their life. We called the police right away, and they came to where we were. Ashley and I told them what happened, and a few cops went and searched for the men. Here's what Ashley said. The man on the side of the road did the same exact thing he did to me, except instead of sending her in the correct direction, He sent her and another, which coincidentally led her to a group of men who terrorized her. The truck drove down to where she was parked and blocked the front of her car. There were men inside the car and outside in the back. They all jumped out and began yelling at her to get out. They became angry when she wouldn't listen to them and began beating the car, trying to force her out. They threatened to break her windows if she continued to disobey them. She tried driving away, but the men kept blocking her way, and she didn't have the courage to hit them with the car. They were yelling sexual comments and other profanities to her. They did all of this until they noticed my arrival and fled. We didn't see the license plate number, and to be honest, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was more concerned about Ashley's safety. I wish I had got it because the cops said that they had searched the area and also the way the car had driven, and found no trace of the men. They assured us they would let us know if they called them, and then we could discuss what to do from there. A few weeks go by, and I had my mom call them to check up on their progress, but they still had no success in finding them. I was really upset and frustrated for a while. Ashley was so scared to leave her house for a long time. Her parents even suggested that she see a therapist, but she refused. Since then, she has moved on from it and is happy. However, she and I will never forget that scary experience. It was truly scary. I think this little story here will be improved by some context about the setting and such, so here we go. First, this took place after I graduated high school and moved away from my family. I moved up to Alaska again, and I say again because I lived there before and attended college there. Second, and very conveniently, my mother had been renting out her old house instead of selling it. I say conveniently because the long-standing residents had moved away, and therefore I was awarded the old house. I had to work quite a bit to keep up the payments, but my mom pitched in, thankfully. Third, at the beginning of the story, I should make you aware that I had recently broken up with a girl who had been staying with me in the old house I was renting through my mom. And this breakup was unclean and dysfunctional, much like the relationship itself was. And finally, the story begins. It was winter break, which means I would be spending more time inside than I normally would. It was somewhat lonely in the house, being without a stable girlfriend then. Also, there are no neighbors really to speak of, as the house was in an extremely wooded region for a few miles out of town. One late afternoon, soon after I thought the whole breakup predicament had come to a close, I was made quite aware that it wasn't. My cell phone began ringing and ringing from an unknown number. Cliché, I know, and I decided to pick it up. It was, of course, Max. She began telling me about how great her new boyfriend is and how horrible I was, and the sort of talk that you can almost smell the booze off the caller's breath from miles away. I actually listened until she decided to hand the phone to her boyfriend, where he was instead sounding oddly threatening, and I decided to hang up in the most polite manner possible with the F you and have a nice day. Days later, again with my mind beginning to forget, only this time about the most certainly drunken phone call, I'm lying on the living room couch watching some TV. While lying there, I noticed something quite unsettling. A person standing in the window behind me. How did I notice this, you ask? The reflection from the TV screen is how. I didn't move, not an inch. I had no gun, I had no knife. I had nothing but my wit and my fists. I just laid there watching the reflection. Eventually it moved away from the window. That normally wouldn't spook me, but I was taking into account that 1, the house was nowhere near another, so that's a red flag. 2, if somebody was just wanting to talk, they would knock. And 3, I was most certain it was that new boyfriend of hers. Nothing became of that situation, but similar situations continued, such as a car pulling into the driveway and no one getting out and leaving inconspicuously. This was worrisome at the least, but I didn't suspect the true threat. A few days later, I'm laying in bed at night. It was pretty late and I was getting ready to sleep. I get another call from an unknown number. It is her, but this time she's asking me to come outside and see her because she wants to deliver an apology. At the time I was thinking, oh, shall we say, screw off? Though I still went outside to see what the deal was. I open the door and of course it's incredibly dark. I say into the phone, I'm outside. Come around back. With this, I began to walk on the snow-covered ground in the darkness with my just put on boots. The motion lights turn on as I cross the garage and the driveway. The snow masking the ground is tinted yellow by the light. I round the corner of the garage and turn my phone to see. There's a road that runs behind my house and connects to the driveway by the bending, and I make my way towards the road. The snow crunches beneath my boots as I come even closer. There's a part in the trees that allows me to walk straight to the road. Otherwise, one would have to make his way around the entirety of the driveway, and I reach this part. I ask into the phone, where are you? In the car. I see you. I step onto the road and see her car parked a few dozen feet away from me with the lights dim. So what's the deal? I just want to talk. Come here. I approach the car and make my way around to the passenger side, and I finally see her face. She waves me in, and I go ahead and oblige, sitting down in the car. I look at her and she says, "Look, I'm sorry, I know I've been a real bitch lately." "Nah, it's okay. I really wasn't good to you and I deserve it." I don't agree, but... Then of course, she abruptly stops speaking because car lights shine from behind us. Naturally, I assume it's her boyfriend, and by the look on her face, she did too. The car parks behind us, and sure enough, the boyfriend gets out and storms over to my side of the car. He yanks on the door handle and the door swings open, and he attempts to grab me, but I grab his wrist and get out of the car. "What the heck do you think you're doing with her, huh?" "We were talking and I was about to leave." "BS. You're trying to bang her." "Look, I'm trying to sleep. I'm in no mood to do anything." He gave me this look of utter enragement before swinging at me and of course missing. A little scuffle ensued, and all that happened was him swearing and eventually slipping and falling before yelling at us both, "I'll kill you guys." I just stood by her car as he pulled away. She gave me a lift back to the house and I invited her in, and she obliged. It was late in the night and I suggested she lock her car if she was going to stay the night, and she again obliged. We slept upstairs in my bed before I woke hours later. There was a banging at the back door, and I knew this because the back door was directly below my room. She woke up too and said, "Oh man." I stand up quickly and go to my closet and reach behind the coats that I never wear and grab my Louisville Slugger. She was sitting upright in my bed with her hands seemingly embarrassingly covering her eyes. I didn't say anything before walking down the stairs slowly, attempting to be silent. The lights were off and there were no windows on the staircase, and the banging on the back door had audibly ceased. I held the bat tightly, making sure it didn't bang into the wall to signal my position at the time. I remember how slowly I stepped down, especially on the bottom 3 steps, which were always the creakiest. Once I reached the last step, I froze, and it still gives me chills to this day. The hardwood floors creak around the bottom of the staircase, and there was a creaking that was growing closer and closer. I raised the bat above my head, ready to slam whoever it was right on the top of the head. The creaking grew closer until I could hear it from my side, and I planned to swing as soon as it was in front of me, as the staircase opened to the left from the bottom coming up. I listened ever so carefully, holding my breath. The creaking came to my northeast, and I squeezed my hands tighter than I ever had before around that bat, waiting for it to come just north of me. This time they were directly in front of me, and I slammed the bat down hard. I hit something hard, and whatever it was crumpled to the floor with a bang and a small flash. I turned on the light, and there he was. The boyfriend, of course. He had shot his gun directly at the floor and left a hole in the hardwood. My ex came down the stairs and was crying, muttering that "I'm sorry" over and over. Called the police, and 4 cop cars pulled into my driveway along with an ambulance in a matter of minutes. I sat there at the base of the stairs watching the boyfriend. He was breathing because I could tell from his chest slowly inclining and declining off the floor. I had grabbed what I think was a 9mm off the floor and kept it in my hand with the safety turned on, and I just shook my head over and over in utter disbelief. I explained the situation to the police as the paramedics rushed in and carried him out on a stretcher. All in all, I didn't get to sleep until the afternoon later that day, after all things had been finished. He ended up actually being induced into a coma and eventually recovered, but a restraining order had already been filed in advance. My ex and I became good friends after the incident, and she never dated that guy again. I never ended up moving though. I had considered it heavily, and nothing has since happened. And there you have it. This happened to me about a week ago. Honestly, it's one of the freakiest encounters of my life. It might sound fake to a lot of people, and all I have is my word, but I swear on my life and the life of everybody that I love that this is true. I was scared out of my mind, and I'll remember this encounter until the day I die. Last week, I took my dog to this fenced dog park. I try to go around 5 or 6 because that's when most people get off work and bring their dogs, so there's a large amount of dogs for my puppy to socialize and play with. It rained earlier in the day but stopped, so I was surprised to see only one person in the dog park. I knew both him and his dog, and we chatted for a bit, while our dogs chased each other around. Also worth mentioning, the atmosphere was just so creepy. A low, thick fog covered by the entire dog park. It was that horrible weather that's somehow both humid and cold. Just a dreary, rainy fall day. It wasn't that dark yet, so when the guy and his dog left, I decided to stay for a while and play fetch with my dog. Mistake number 1. I throw the ball around for a bit, and on one throw, something caught my eye. There was a man in all black, but up, standing at the fence, completely still facing towards me. I couldn't see his face, so I didn't know if he was looking at me. I tried to brush it off as maybe he's just watching us play fetch. I do have a 5-month-old puppy, after all, who is adorable and draws a lot of attention from strangers. I threw the ball in his direction a few more times so that I could glance at him to see if he could move on. No, he never did. At that point, I started to get really weirded out. I didn't want to stay alone in a dog park with only one entrance. It was significantly darker at this point as well. I really wanted to get out of there, but in order to leave, I'd have to walk past this man. The dog park only has one entrance on one side. You have to walk the length of the dog park on this path in order to get to where you park. Walking past him was the only way out, so I gathered my stuff and began to leave. I walked to the entrance, glancing at him every few seconds, and he's still standing completely still, but now he's turned more towards me. I took out my phone and pretended to be talking to someone, saying things like, "I'll be there in 20. 15. What? That's too soon. Okay, I'll try." The moment I left the dog park, he turned and started walking away towards the parking lot. I was relieved, but only for a moment. He wasn't walking. He was like shuffling, only a few feet at a time. Then he would stop completely, turn around and look at me, and then keep going. He probably repeated this 3 or 4 times. Then his walking changed. He started throwing his head back, looking up at the sky, repeatedly, rhythmically, and taking huge strides forward. His movements were bizarre, an exaggerated tiptoe-like walk. If you've ever read The Smiling Man on No Sleep, it kind of reminded me like that. Like exactly like that, except he was moving slow and not fast. The moment he started doing it, that story was legit the first thing to pop into my head. And still, every 5-10 feet or so, he would look back at me. I was walking behind him slowly in the same direction toward my car. Needless to say, I was pretty much 100% convinced that I was going to be assaulted, stabbed, robbed, kidnapped, or whatever. I was scared to death. My whole body was tense and cold. I've never felt that kind of fear in my entire life. Like deep, horrible pit of your stomach, I could die tonight fear. Then suddenly, he turns sharply and runs into the trees alongside the path. I took this opportunity to pick up the pace and pass the spot where he had run into the trees. Mistake number 2. Barely seconds after I passed him, I heard a rustling, and he's coming out of the trees behind me, really fast. No longer walking like the Smiling Man. A very fast, curt power walk, straight to me. This is where I noped the heck out and started sprinting. Side note, my puppy was clueless to everything and was having a great time. Oh boy, running. He was useless. I was only about 30 yards from my car. I scooped up my dog. Not an easy feat to do while running. He's about 40 pounds and jumped into the driver's seat. Started my car, locked the doors, and peeled out there as fast as I could. As I was backing out of my parking space, the light shone for just a second on the man, who was standing at the end of the path or beginning of the parking lot, completely still. I may or may not have called my mom and cried the entire way home. I was so shaken up I didn't want to walk around the night for a few days. Even writing this has made me incredibly uncomfortable. I've told people that I frequently see them they're about to encounter, and now I make sure that I am never the last person in the dog park. This is the first time I've ever written this down, and even though it was over 6 years ago, it has changed my personality forever. This isn't a made-up story. It genuinely happened and was actually featured in my local paper, but I don't like the idea of people knowing who I am or finding me, so I won't link it. I'll try to keep this as short as I can while giving most of the details. A little background for context. First of all, I'm a female and was 23 at the time of the incident. I was living in the house my parents left me after they passed away. My dad died when I was 5 from a stomach ulcer, and my mom died from womb cancer when I was 22. I'm an only child with no grandparents or other family, so as you can imagine, it was pretty devastating to lose my mother, and I wasn't ready to sell her home. My childhood home yet, so I was living there alone at the time. The way the house was situated was pretty perfect for any criminal behavior, I guess, because although I wasn't isolated, neighbors are a stone's throw away on both sides. It was surrounded by very tall trees at the front and backed onto a forest. So anyway, on with what happened. The first odd thing that didn't seem odd at the time was that somebody was ringing the doorbell a lot very early in the morning that day. At first I ignored it because I was still grieving and kind of depressed, so I didn't really care about the outside world. Anyways, the person seemed to leave after 5 or 6 rings and I fell back asleep. Cut to the afternoon, the doorbell rings again, and this time I can't ignore it because the man outside could see me through the blurry glass door of my hallway. So I answer, and this homeless-looking man with a huge backpack on the ground starts asking me about my home. He obviously wasn't part of any company, so thinking he's an oddball trying to see how easy it would be to rob my house, I politely say I'm not interested and close the door. He stands there for ages, but I see him eventually leave and I brush it off. 20 minutes later, he's back. Thankfully, I locked my door because I see him walk straight up to the door and start trying to open it. I shout through the glass at him, and he looks shocked and says he knew my mother. I just ignore him and call the police straight away after checking all the doors and windows are locked. While I'm still on the phone, I hear him using what sounds like tools and getting scared he's about to break through the door. I stand by my back door ready to run. About 30 seconds later, I see my front door shudder and slightly open. I panic, drop the home phone. Smart, I know, and run as fast as I can down my garden into the woods, onto the path and run to a neighboring street. I don't see him anywhere, so I assume he's robbing my home, and that's all he wanted. Slightly relieved, I knock on a stranger's door at random and ask them to call the police again. The police arrive to meet me in the living room of the stranger. What seems like hours later, but was probably only 45 minutes. I go to the police station and find out exactly what happened was a lot creepier than I had imagined. When the police got to my home, the man was gone, but he left a host of fingerprints and evidence, and because he was known to the police, he was picked up the next day, hiding in a family campsite. He wasn't too bright, obviously, and also had a long list of mental health problems, everything from schizophrenia to manic depression. He used a long screw-like tool to break my door lock by hammering it through, and once inside, he left huge carving knife marks all along the hallway, as well as muddy handprints and creepy carved-out words on all 4 of the bedroom doors, which were almost all spelled incorrectly, like the word bitch as well as the phrase gut you. It might not sound like much, but I can't explain just how scary it is to see slice marks meters long covering your hallway. He also left a large knife stabbed into one of my bedroom doors, fingerprints and all. He didn't steal anything as far as I'm aware, but he'd actually left a note for me that morning when I hadn't answered my door, although I never saw it because it was under a plant pot. His spelling was atrocious, so it was hard to even fully understand what the note said, but he proved he knew my full name, age, and that I lived alone. Frustratingly, I wish I could say he went to prison for a long time, but in the end, I think he only got around 3 years, even though he was wanted for other petty crimes and a more serious case of assault. I've never seen him again, and since sold my old family home, but I still can't bring myself to answer the door to strangers to this day. So this happened to me when I was 15. My friends and I were sitting on the curb of our local shopping center around 11 p.m. waiting for a ride home, and this man, probably early to mid-20s and attractive, came up to us and asked us for a favor. He had a buzz cut, a military-looking outfit, boots, etc. We live close to a training camp, so we see people at the town center in uniform all the time. I thought he was harmless enough and asked what he wanted. He says he'll pay me and my friend $40 each to take off our boots and socks and put our feet on his face while he lies down in his car. He was looking around and smiling as he said it, and we thought it was a joke, so we said no, and I, with my big mouth, said, maybe 100 each, misreading the situation as some sort of prank. The joke was not a joke. I realized when he got very serious and agreed. I shot him down quickly, explaining I had read the situation wrong, but my false acceptance had awoken some perseverance in him. He kept getting closer to where we were sitting, asking our names, where we lived, and thrusting his money at us, saying he would pay us anything. He then changed the deal to us staying put and not coming to his car, but to instead just lift our feet, and he would lie under them right there in the parking lot. Eventually the guy got sick of hearing our no's and huffed away to the back of the parking lot and got in his car and left. We watched his car drive off, but instead of it fading into the distance, it makes a sharp turn into the adjacent parking lot. The car now facing us blasts its brights on. The guy then gets out of his car and opens all of his doors. The interior lights are on, and I can see him reach in to grab something from the front seat. From the back seat emerges a very tall, seemingly well-built man. At this point, both guys are staring in our direction, and with headlights blasted and car still running, the two break into a full sprint toward us. They have a good way to run to close the distance, but my friend has a horrible eyesight and couldn't see them coming. Meaning, as I'm screaming and hopping in place, telling her they're coming after us, she is still firmly planted on the ground, unable to process what's going on. In panic, I end up dragging her along the curb until she stands up and runs with me. We ran down the stairs to the other half of the town center, But at the time there was no stores we could run into and ask for help. It felt like a movie. Two girls near tears pounding on closed shop windows as we ran past. The bottom half of the shopping center is surrounded by woods, so we ran in fairly deep and hid. We could see that they came to the edge of the trees, far enough away from us, but for some reason gave up after about 30 seconds of looking around and left. We sat there crying for a good 5 minutes till one of us had the bright idea to finally call our parents. After that, hanging out in the center after dark was a no-go for us. My husband and I purchased our home in July of 2015. It was a pre-sale, and from the contract portion to having the keys in our hands, it was about 5 to 6 months. We were dropping by a couple of times a week to check on the progress of the house. We met a few of the neighbors and familiarized ourselves with the area. Our house is the corner lot on a private road at the very end of the neighborhood. The entire neighborhood is a dead end, one way in and one way out. Prior to our house being there, it was a vacant lot, which means that people parked here as we live in the city and parking is regulated. It's dead quiet back here, and nothing ever happens. I'm the type of person who's very observant. My husband likes to say I'm the 80-year-old get off my lawn type at the ripe age of 28. I've never been good with names though. Like I said, parking is regulated, so some people parking on the side of the house, which parallels the main road, isn't uncommon. It's all 2-hour parking. At the time, my husband was working 12-hour shifts and was carpooling, so he was being picked up around 4 in the morning. He had just left, and I had heard a vehicle pull up shortly after, and I thought maybe he had forgotten something, so I peek out the window and I see a truck parked alongside our house, facing the wrong direction. This wasn't his ride, and I hadn't ever seen this truck out here before. I figured maybe they were waiting to pick someone up for work and left it at that. Over the next 45 minutes to an hour, they continued to sit there. Engine off, engine on, engine off, engine on. Headlights off, headlights on. The truck was not in park, as I could see that their third brake light was on. It had also come and gone several times. If you're waiting for somebody, why leave your engine on for an hour? Why drive back and forth? At this point, I was a little worried. It was approaching the time that I needed to leave for work, and I would drive right past this truck in order to leave the neighborhood. I don't know what this person was doing, and I was afraid that maybe they were casing the houses in the neighborhood, ours specifically. I texted my husband, and he told me that it was weird, and if I was worried, I should just call 911. I didn't want to be dramatic, so I got ready and left. I left the living room light and TV on just in case. We have blinds over all of our windows, and there's no way to see it. As I leave, I see that the truck is no longer there. I'm relieved. As I'm almost at the end of the neighborhood, I see the truck in another driveway. Now I'm scared. What the heck is this guy doing? As I drive past the truck, it turns around and heads back to her house. I thought, okay, if I'm going to call, I at least need the license plate number. So I turn around and get what I thought was the make of the truck. It was a Mazda, and I thought it was a Ford. And the license plate number and peel out. I was so scared that I was physically shaking, and I stalled my car. As soon as I get out to the main road, I called the police to report suspicious activity, gave the description, and said that I'd like to be contacted afterward about the outcome. The police station is 2 streets down, so I knew it would be quick. About 15 minutes later, as I'm pulling into work, I get a phone call from a police officer. He asks if I know a Mary. Nothing comes to mind. I'm bad with names to begin with, but I don't know a Mary. He asks if I'm familiar with the yellow house across the street. I say yes. He tells me that it's Mary's house and that the man in the truck is Mary's ex-boyfriend, and they've been broken up for 3 years. I believe I said, I'm sorry, but what the heck is he doing here then? Well, he was watching the house. He had been stalking her. She was not home at the time. The officer told him that his behavior was really creepy and to not ever show up again. The officer filed a report and patrolled the neighborhood for a few weeks. Even though I didn't know Mary and we only had exchange waves in passing, it was creepy as heck and she needed to know. I've never seen anybody so freaked out. Apparently, it was not a mutual breakup. He was very obsessive and had some dependency issues. She had blocked all communication, and this was the last straw in order for her to get a restraining order. For whatever reason, she wasn't granted one earlier. Because our house/street is newer, it doesn't always show up on maps or GPS, so we have to give people turn-by-turn directions. When I mapped our house recently, sure enough, that truck was parked in front of Mary's house. My husband is in the military, so I'm home alone a lot and need to take care of animals late at night when normally he would do it. The first incident was a couple of years ago. living out in town instead of the base. We lived in a decent apartment complex in a 2-story townhouse. The town itself is shitty, so it's not safe even in a nice area. The dog I had at the time was feeling sick, so I was taking him for a late night walk, about 2 a.m. to empty his bowels. I should mention that he's a big black dog, so essentially, given certain circumstances, he's basically invisible at night. We are heading back to the apartment, near some trees, so my dog really isn't visible when a group of guys turns a corner and starts walking behind me. I glance back. Whatever. I'm not scared. I keep walking. The guys start getting loud, so I glance back again and get a little nervous and start speeding up. At this point, one of the guys says, "Ah, she's scared," in a mocking tone, and another says, "Let's catch up." So I was like, heck no, and started moving at a bit of a run now. I am not fast. I'm very out of shape and slow, and my idea of exercise is walking up the stairs of my townhouse. Obviously, they're catching up quick, all the while yelling stuff, and I start to really panic. And they're getting closer, just about close enough that even the invisible dog will be noticeable. My dog stops short. Now I'm still holding his leash and running, if you will, and it pulls from my hand when he stops because I'm surprised. I immediately turn around to try and grab his leash again because I'm not abandoning my baby to a group of creepy dudes. By now, they're about 10 feet away, and my dog turns to face the guys and starts growling at them. He's a very big dog, like I said, all black and German Shepherd / Chow mix, probably. He's a mutt. I don't know for sure. And his head comes past my waist. So picture this, an all black dog with gleaming white teeth growling at you at night. And he starts barking viciously. Mean barks. The guy backs up and they apologize. "Hey, sorry, we're just messing around." And they back up a little bit more. The dog advances. They apologize again. Back up more. Then one of them tells me to call Cujo off, which apparently offends my dog because he lunges. And oops, I'm still not holding his leash. The dude sprints away while my dog is barking and chasing them. He's got awful hip dysplasia and was recovering from a hip surgery, so they got away pretty easily, and as soon as they turned a corner, he trotted back to me with a big goofy grin like life was good. Obviously, I slept downstairs on the couch with him that night and told him that he was my favorite dog, and once his belly was better, I made him gourmet dog treats. Realistically, I suppose the guys didn't plan to hurt me, just scare me, but if you get your kicks scaring young women, you probably deserve to be chased by a pissed off dog. I used to live in Orlando, in a somewhat shady part of town. The 5 deadbolts on the apartment door should have raised some flags, but I was a student and there was a lot of students in the area and I was young and not very wary. Our less nice part of town bordered a very nice part of town. There was a 4 to 6 lane road that ran through the area and a jogging path that ran alongside it. Our apartment complex was right next to the road and the trail, and a little further down was my local gas station, where I would walk once a day to buy cigarettes and other things. Because of the layout, it was easy for me to walk out my door, step on the path, and walk the 10 minutes to the gas station. Walking through the complex took longer. I often ended up taking this walk at night. Sure, I was a girl walking alone, but the path bordered this huge road with a lot of traffic, and right across the street was a busy strip mall with fast food places and such, so it wasn't like a dark path in the woods or anything. And hey, I always brought pepper spray and paid attention to my surroundings, etc. So one night I head to the gas station around 11 p.m. As I'm walking along the path, I hear something behind me. Turning around, I notice, about 30 yards behind me, there's a car on the trail. Like it had to have pulled off the road and pulled up onto the path. I'm stopped and staring, and a guy gets out of the driver's side and starts walking around the grass between the trail and the road as though he's looking for something. Oh, I think. Something must have fallen out of his car, and he's pulled over to search for it. I keep walking. As I'm walking, I'm hearing something again behind me. I stop and turn. Guy is now 15 yards behind, still no headlights. And I turn as he stops the car. Or he stops the car as I turn. Again, he gets out, and it looks like he's searching for something in the grass, but he's closer now. And I'm very creeped out. I'm not close enough to the gas station, so I pick up the pace. The next time I turn, he's even closer. He stops again when I look, but he doesn't get out of the car now. I don't want to just take off to let him know he scared me, but I am now power walking. My pepper spray is in my hand, but what does pepper spray do against a car? I throw a look over my shoulder, and he's only a few yards behind me. He doesn't stop this time. The distance is closing. Screw it, I take off. I judge the distance to the gas station too far along the trail, but there are some trees and stuff on the other side of the path from the road, so I bolt into them. through them and through a little ditch towards the light of the station, which is now right in front of me. I felt like the dude in the car was going fast. I look behind me as I'm running through the ditch, and I see him through the space in the trees. His car slows down, and he's just cruising along the section of the path I left. I continue my sprint to the gas station, where I know I'll feel safer. The owners and employees all know me, so I make it out front, and I'm catching my breath, watching the part of the jogging path that meets the intersection. I see the car clearly for the first time. It's one of those brown car truck combos, with a tan stripe alongside. Dude drives up the trail to the intersection, flips his lights on, and floors it onto the main road, disappearing. Up until that point, I was running on a mix of adrenaline and the feeling that maybe I'm being stupid, but better safe than sorry feeling. Once I had made it inside the gas station, I pretty much broke down, shaking. To this day, I still don't know what that guy's intentions were. Maybe he didn't even see me and was just looking for something. Maybe he was planning to hit me with his car and drag me off. Or maybe he was an asshole that was just trying to scare me. Either way, I had my boyfriend come get me from the gas station, and I never walked alone at night again. This is not my story, it is actually my grandma's. She told me this story after I shared an equally horrific tale of my own, which I will post someday soon. Anyways, I figured I should tell you guys my grandma is a part of the time period when lots of Southerners were migrating to the northern states looking for work and better pay to help out their families still living down south. This took her to New York, where she found seamstress work, and where this story takes place. I should also add that my grandma is a tough old bird, and she's very paranoid about people that she doesn't really know and situations she has no control over, so this story came as a shock to me and kind of explains a little bit why she might be so paranoid. I will also add that she does not and has never taken anyone's shit. She's about 5'9", has muscles in her 60s, still rocks a crew cut, and could definitely kick ass if necessary. She's not a typical grandma at all, so if something scares her, it's really scary. So my grandma and her friend Judy worked down the street from each other. They were introduced by my grandma's boss and hit off pretty well, and they started hanging out frequently after work. My grandma said one night they went to a bar and were having a good old time. It was here that the men approached them. There were two of them, one tall, light-skinned man and a short, darker-skinned man. Judy seemed to know them and seemed happy to see them. She introduced them to my grandma, and so they all decided to hang out for the evening. After a while of drinking and having a good time in the bar, the men started asking Judy if she and her beautiful friend would like to come back to their house to continue the party since the bar was going to close soon. My grandma declined, as she's always been paranoid, and she said the men were giving off creepy vibes all night, doing stuff like whispering when they thought she and Judy weren't paying attention, and giving the general creeper stare that we women have been accustomed to noticing, and the short, dark man kept trying to touch my grandma's waist and wrist. She said he was also very ugly, and that she practically towered over him. At one point he tried to hold her hand, and she gave him her "I'll kill you" look, and he let go. The tall man persisted with the after-party idea, saying they could go play cards and dance some more at their big nice house. He promised others would be there as well to party and play cards. Judy by this time was tanked, and the man had her convinced, but she didn't want to go without my grandma, so she proceeded to beg my grandma to come with her. She tells her to stop being paranoid and to trust her, that these guys are her friends and that's okay. So against her better judgment, they left with them. My grandma says they drove for a good while, and the moment she looked out of the car window and didn't recognize anything at all, and asked the tall man where they were going, and all he said was upstate, that she was probably in trouble. The two men sat in the front, and she and Judy were in the back. Judy is telling my grandma to chill out. They're going to have a good time. So they got there, and it turns out the guys didn't lie. They pull up in front of a nice big house in some suburb. They go inside, and grandma says she remembers the front door leading them into a long, dimly lit hallway. They were all walking single file down the hallway in this order: tall man, Judy, grandma, short man. She said that at the end of the hallway there was a door which they went to. The tall man had to stop to open that door with the key. She said she saw a big rat in a spare room off the hall run across a dirty mattress with horrible brown stains all over it, and she said that this is what initially creeped her out about the house. The stains looked like dried blood, and it was the only thing in the room just lying in the middle of the floor. So they were waiting for the tall man to open the door, and my grandma is like 2 seconds from losing her cool when the door finally opens, and here's where the story gets really scary. My grandma said she barely got a glimpse into the room. The door pulled out towards them, so she could see through the crack in between the door where its hinges and the frame meet as it opened wider. There were women of all ages in the nude lingerie and garters flying all over the furniture, playing cards and smoking cigarettes with men, and she could hear somebody screaming. Grandma screamed and turned to run, knocking the short man down in the process. My grandma says she was much taller than him, so she barely noticed that she run over him. The tall man had already grabbed Judy, who was now screaming too, and with the help of another man, shoved her inside the room with the other women and slammed the door, then turned to help the short man chase her down. She said she could hear them behind her yelling to catch that bitch, and that they would kill her when they caught her. She managed to get down the hall and out of the door, and she ran down the street screaming because she didn't know where she was or where a train station was to get away, and they were still chasing her. She ran into a little old man who was opening a news agency by the grace of God. He asked her what was going on, and when she pointed at the men, he pulled out a gun and started yelling at them to get the heck out of there, and they hightailed it back to wherever. The newsstand man helped her find a train station and gave her money so she could get back to the city. My grandma never saw Judy again. Her boss told her one day that a nice-looking light-skinned brother came and picked up all of Judy's belongings from her place of work, which was also where she lived. Said he told him Judy wouldn't be returning to work and had found a new place to live. In a nutshell, my grandma avoided being abducted into a human trafficking ring. She says that this has been going on for longer than the world wants to admit or know. For those of you who ask, like I asked my grandma, why she didn't call the police, you have to understand, my grandma didn't know where they took her or if she'd been given real names. She didn't know the address or anything that would have helped find Judy. Also, being from Alabama back then, she didn't have much faith that she would be helped by the police and was actually afraid of them and what the men might do to her for meddling. She said that she wishes she could have just convinced Judy not to go, and for a long time she felt guilty about being the only one who got away. I'm glad she did though, because I might not exist if they had caught her. When I was 17, I moved to college 2 hours away from home and took residence in the dorms on campus. The dorms were not run through the school, but through a management company. There were a lot of safety problems in the dorms as a result of this. Assaults, ODs, drugs, shootings right outside, etc. I am a 100-pound female, so I always watched out for serious situations around me. Everything was great. I had some awful roommates, but I was mostly left alone. One day in September, I was leaving for class early in the morning when I spotted a condom taped to my name tag on the door. It had a note that said, "Call me," with some random phone number. I told the RAs and nothing came of it. I just thought it was some random prank pulled by one of the guys on the floor. Things went south with my roommates, mostly because of my night terror scaring them, even though I warned them before we even agreed to be roommates, so I moved into a 2-bedroom dorm with my new roommate, Jay. We each had our own room. After a week of living there, I started noticing that things were appearing in the living room while we were sleeping. I asked Jay about it, and she vehemently denied that it was her. One day we noticed that the lock on the front door did not lock properly. If you pulled on the lock and twisted the handle at the same time, the door would come open. Around the same time, I started getting Snapchats of inappropriate things, vague threats and offers for great sex. I would get ones that say things like, "You look great today with that specific article of clothing I was wearing." I filed a report to the dorms to get the lock fixed, but it took like 4 months, 8 complaints, and the threat of legal action, and my friend D yelling at them to get any action. We got our door fixed, but the president still appeared outside the door with notes for me. I was still receiving Snapchats, but I moved out of the dorms into an apartment with my then boyfriend. The Snapchats continued. Then I started getting calls at my work. I worked for the dean's office of my college, and I was in charge of answering phones. Every day I would get at least 3 or more calls from randomly generated numbers. I discovered it was through apps like Viber and Skype after I reported to the police and they investigated. I would answer the phone. I would hear heavy breathing for a few seconds, then they would hang up. I thought it was just some 12-year-old pranking our office until my coworker got a call. She answered with her name, and the person on the line asked if they could speak with me. Thinking it was one of the deans that I had been working with, she forwarded it to my phone. I answered, and I received the same heavy breathing and hang up. I reported it to my boss, and she did nothing. One of the deans overheard the conversation and reported it to Title IX. Oh boy, talking to them was a mistake. After the meeting with them, the threat started getting worse, and this person found me in my new apartment. One day in December, I was dog-sitting 2 wonderful dogs who hated other dogs and would bark at them on sight. It was around 11 p.m. and I decided to take them out before bed. We get outside. To the right of me is a bunch of thick trees that are hard to see through. I start to take the girls to the grass on the left. they start growling and barking at something in the trees. Thinking it's another dog, I try to pull them away, but they will not budge. I glance over, and out of the trees comes a tall man. But the weird thing is, he's wearing a Michael Myers-like mask. He starts rushing towards me. The dogs get between me and him. He stops, and I run up the stairs behind me into the apartment as he is disappearing into the trees again. Stupidly, I don't call the police, but I see him one more time before I move to my new apartment. Things are quiet for a while. My boyfriend and I break up, and I spend the first few days in the apartment alone. Come to find out, the window that can be accessed from the ground doesn't lock. One morning I wake up and everything seems normal. I check the mirror to do my hair for work. I have a bald spot. My head was shaved in the middle of the night. I find my hair tied up in knots in an envelope. I immediately call the police. They do an investigation. Find the window was broken but can't find anything to figure out who it was that came into my apartment. They asked me to compile a list of everything that was missing, and the only thing gone other than my hair was 3 pairs of dirty underwear. I have photos of the hair and bald spot if anyone is interested, and an investigation finds nobody. I have since moved. I no longer answer phones at my work, and I keep bear spray next to my bed at all times. After the events that took place when I was 8 years old, things went back to normal for my friends and me. The guy who tormented us was gone, and we were pretty much safe again. This continued until we finished primary school. When this happened, we didn't see each other very much, apart from a few who went to the same school as me. Up until that point, my best friend was Jake. He ended up going to a different school, so we only saw each other twice since we finished school. When we were both 13, we had moved on and weren't friends anymore. So one day when I was 13 or 14, I met up with an old friend. His name was Ethan. He had also been friends with Jake. When we met up, we decided to go to a large park that was located between our houses. We walked and went on the swings for a while, but left after a girl started shouting at us. We walked to the basketball court close to the exit as we made our way towards Ethan's house. This area was surrounded by thick bushes and trees that are easy to hide in, so we had no idea what was about to happen. We weren't paying much attention to our surroundings as we had a lot to catch up on. We didn't notice a group of masked people dressed completely in black approaching us until it was too late. We were surrounded, and we saw that they were all armed with kitchen knives. There were 6 or 7 of them surrounding us when one of them spoke. He demanded all of our money and our phones. He said they would kill us if we refused or tried anything. His voice sounded familiar, and when I got a better look at him, I realized that it was Jake. I don't think he recognized me because he pointed his knife right at me and demanded our stuff again. At this point, Ethan had also realized who it was. Simultaneously, we both told him who we were. He looked at us for a second, and then he pulled his mask off and greeted us. He told me that I hadn't changed much before telling us that we were lucky and to get out of here. We started to walk away, and as we reached the exit, we turned and saw them running into the bushes. Freaked out, we ran to Ethan's house and didn't leave for a few hours. When it came time for me to leave, I ran straight home, avoiding the park. I saw him again after that, but I always avoided him. I almost never went out on my own again for the next few years. So my childhood best friend, who was like a brother to me at one point, almost mugged me. If he hadn't realized who we were, things could have been very different. The people with him seemed pretty ready to stab us even if we did what they wanted. He had screwed me over and dragged me into bad things before this, but I can't forgive him, even though he let us go. He wasn't exactly a good person to begin with, but this was way too far. I did recently hear that he has turned his life around, but I'm done with him, and I hope I never see him again. This happened when I was 13 or 14. I was in middle school. The school was about 10 minutes away by car. My parents worked out an arrangement with our neighbor Jake, who was the same year as me. I think Jake was a normal kid. Our friend groups didn't overlap, so we didn't really see each other at school, aside from carpooling. I don't remember the exact arrangement, but basically my parents would drop us both off at school together, and Jake's mom would pick us up. Jake was usually pretty quiet in the car. His mom was really chatty. I had no issue with that. She always wanted to know what was going on at school. I wasn't going to share all the gossip with her, but I told her generally things like how we had a spring play, how there was a science fair, etc. I would have about 10 minutes of conversation with her, and we'd get back to the apartment complex where we lived. Then one day things got weird. Jake was sitting in the back seat that day. I was sitting in the front. His mom said, I think you and Jake would make such a cute couple. You should be his girlfriend." I didn't know what to say to that. I think I mumbled something like, I don't know about that, and stared out the window, trying to act like it wasn't happening. Why was she even bringing this up, I was thinking. She didn't really know me, and I barely even knew Jake. I didn't say anything more in the car. I remember just feeling a really weird awkwardness in the air. I didn't even turn to make eye contact with Jake. I figured he was probably just as uncomfortable as I was. When my parents came home that evening, I told them. My mom and dad kind of shrugged. This hadn't been a serious violation. It wasn't as if Jake's mom had hit me or anything like that, but my parents said I shouldn't carpool with Jake anymore. I think my dad's exact words here. You don't need to be around that stuff. I didn't want to tell anyone at school about this. This wasn't Jake's fault. I didn't want to make him feel bad or embarrassed by saying anything to him or go around telling people about it. I kept quiet on this. I stopped carpooling with him, but I didn't tell anyone at school or anyone else. I barely saw Jake at school, and we just walked past each other when I did. But that wasn't the end of it. After that, Jake's mom started showing up in places where I would be. I used to go to the park on Saturdays to play frisbee. Now, I'd see Jake's mom there. She'd smile at me. She caught on how I went there Saturday mornings, and she'd come every Saturday morning. I had previously never seen her there. There were other examples like that. Also, Jake's mom showed up to the nail salon I went to. I had never seen her there before, but I saw her twice the same month after we stopped carpooling. Maybe this was all coincidence, but I know it wasn't. One day she came up to me at the library and said something like, "Oh, it's so nice to see you here. I bet Jake would love it if you came over to visit sometime soon. You two should hang out more." I didn't know what to say. All I could do was give this awkward smile and mumble something like, "Yeah, sure, maybe." Eventually I had to tell my parents about this. They had a talk with Jake's mom and told her to leave me alone. That was the end of it as far as I know. It was just a really weird situation. From that point onward, we'd almost never see each other. I hope that means she stopped paying attention to me. A couple months ago, right after writing 2 exams. Lucky me. I was home at a time I usually am not. At the time, I had classes every single day at 2 p.m. except for Friday, the day this happened. Now I was lucky. Very lucky. I was in the kitchen maybe an hour after getting home because I had been lazy to go make my lunch straight away after getting home. My kitchen counter is in a U shape, one side and the bottom being on 2 of the walls, the other being in the middle of the kitchen, the windows being where the accent is. So, I was inside the U and I heard my window being opened. Now, I had my blinds open maybe 20 centimeters and one window was open maybe 10 centimeters. It won't open more because we have sticks that prevent it. And the other side was supposedly locked closed. The window that was open was the one that was locked. I scream loud and yell, "Get out," as I see a man lying on my floor with his head, arms, and torso inside my house and his legs outside. He starts leaving, looks straight at me and asks, "Can I take some figs?" In my garden I have a fig tree and this was right around the time when they were good to eat. I, panicking, continue yelling no. The man stops exiting and looks at me, almost offended, and asks, "No?" To get him out, my panicked mind just said, "Yes, take them, but don't take too many because there are very few on the tree." My panicked brain works in a weird way. He exited. I closed all my blinds and called the police. As far as I know, they did not find him, but they did make sure he was nowhere near my house. The thing is, I'm a 17-year-old girl. My only advantage in this situation was that I saw him while he was still getting in. If I had been anywhere else in my house, he would have gotten inside. I encountered my first stalker when I was in 7th grade. This may not seem relevant now, but this was around 2007 to 2009-ish, back when MySpace was a thing. This will all be relevant later. I'm a relatively nice guy, so I'm friendly to most of the people I meet. At the end of the school day, I had a math class with a girl I'll call Sarah. I was assigned to work with her on a project where I guess it all began. She was not attractive to me at all. She had this greasy hair thing that was disgusting. She smelled terrible, was a little bit overweight, and would wear the same clothes every day. Despite her looks, I was always very friendly because she was nice and I felt bad for her because I knew kids would pick on her. Almost every day after that, I would check in on her and talk to her, even though I didn't really want to. She started getting comfortable around me and started liking me. She told me one day she loved me and asked me to be her boyfriend. I kindly rejected and said I liked somebody else. Then things got weird. She would tell me she loved me every day and start talking bad about every pretty girl in school that she thought I liked. She would also stare at me all class, literally the whole 45 minutes. This all started to creep me out, so I told the teacher. My teacher laughed at me in such a rude way, telling me I was overreacting. I didn't know what to do. Ignoring Sarah and not talking to her didn't work because she would still stare and say ridiculous things to me. I started being a little bit mean to her. I made it clear I didn't want to talk to her, and I told her I would never like her. After a week or so of that strategy, I noticed she started acting even more strange. She would lie about things at first, but then the truth finally came out. After hearing about all the details, I started being nice to her again, ignoring the strange things she said. At the time, I had a huge crush on Miley Cyrus from the show Hannah Montana. She knew this. As time went on, I noticed her using many of the catchphrases from the show and doing some of the same hand gestures Miley would make around the show. It was clear that she practiced mimicking the show a lot. It got to the point where I couldn't even watch the show anymore because Sarah acted like her perfectly, and it really creeped me out. She would also make fake Miley Cyrus MySpace accounts sending messages like, "Why don't you like Sarah from your math class?" I'd always confront her about this, and the accounts would be deleted. As the school year went on, my teacher noticed her constant staring and would yell at her to stop. But she would never stop, so she moved her to the other side of the room. She would still position herself to stare at me. She was then kicked out of our class. I didn't see her that much after that, but sometimes in the hall or at lunch, she would run up to me with a disposable camera and take pictures of me. I was tired of her creepy stuff, so I told the vice principal about everything, and shortly after that, she was put in a special needs school. I and my parents had to have a meeting about my safety with the principal because the things she said she was going to do to me were very disturbing. During the meeting, my principal kept saying the word disturbing over and over again. That and the look of just concern on his face made me feel this is more serious than I even thought. Well, it didn't end there. Fast forward a year and a half at the beginning of my 9th grade year. At this point, I haven't seen Sarah since she was kicked out of school. I was talking to a girl on MySpace who was very pretty. I didn't really like her personality, but it was tolerable. I told this girl I was at my friend Greg's house and that she could come hang out. She declined and said another time. Later that night, I and Greg were in his treehouse, which was right next to the road. I remember looking out at the street and seeing somebody sitting on the curb with their hood covering their face, staring down at something in their hands. We ignored it at first, but the person never went away. We told Greg's dad about the person, but they were gone before we could show it. The next morning we walked over to that sidewalk and saw what I was thinking at first was a little piece of paper from a magazine. Picked it up and saw that it was just a thick piece of paper with crayon lines all over. I turned the piece of paper over and noticed that it was a picture of me. My body froze in terror. I had never seen this picture before in my life. It was a picture from a disposable camera, and in the picture I was in the hallway at school. It must have been Sarah. She took this photo and was there last night. How? How did she know I was there, and why was she there? I instantly remembered I told that pretty girl from MySpace where I was that night. I then looked back at the girl's profile, but nothing seemed weird. She had comments and pictures from over a year ago, and she had over 300 friends. She would also publicly talk with friends on there, so the profile couldn't have been fake, right? I then looked at her friends' profiles that she talked to. Each profile had maybe 2 pictures and weren't active at all unless they were talking to this girl. It was then clear that this pretty girl didn't exist and that it was just Sarah. I sent her a message saying to stay away from me and that I was going to call the police. She responded by just sending me a bunch of numbers followed by the words, "I will make you feel." Minutes later, the accounts were deleted. The creepiest thing was that the account was active for over a year before she started talking to me. Still wonder what was she plotting to do. I haven't seen or heard from Sarah since, and it's been at least 6 years. I don't feel this is over. I truly think she's been planning something this whole time, and we'll be back for some type of revenge. Back in 2009, I got a call from my friend Kay. This was 2 years after we went our separate ways for college. I was 20 at the time. He had begun to tell me of this island that we had to go to. We had grown up together and spent our youth exploring the ins and outs of our small Midwestern town, so I was all for it. He had explained to me that he and some of his friends had found it when they were exploring in the river. He had told me all about it and was excited to share his finds with another person. I was jealous that I wasn't there when it was first discovered, but I got over it and got pumped to see what he had unearthed. It had been running a joke that I don't know how to swim, never did, and probably never will. and the island lay in the middle of the river. Usually the waters weren't high, so he reassured me that all I had to do was wait behind him and our other friend S would be behind me in case I hit a sinkhole. Sucking up my nervousness of aquatic things, I agreed, and we popped off our shirts and sunk into the muddy waters. The island looked close from the banks, but took some time to get into the chest-high waters. As we floated with the current, we made jokes and spent our time bullshitting. None of us had a camera due to the fact that we didn't want to get our phones wet, and really, who cares? He had already taken pictures from his last quest. Now it was just time to show us. Once we pulled our bodies up onto the land, we took a minute to breathe. Kay had taken his shoes off to keep them dry and left them with our t-shirts, but it wasn't a place to be without feet protection. Wild bushes and branches lay strewn about everywhere. The island looked fairly untouched. It was in the river next to a state park, but still deep enough down where people wouldn't bother it. We followed Kay's lead into this thistle, and after about 4 or 5 minutes, we found a clearing towards the center. In it lay what we were looking for. There was a giant cement ass of a lady sitting next to a lawn chair. This wasn't just some art project. It was well detailed. There was a marble stuffed into her to resemble a clit, and it was massive. We laughed and romped around, but I had a strange feeling on the island. It felt weird. My other 2 friends seemed a little creeped out, but genuinely blew it off. It stuck with me, though. A few weeks later, I decided that I had to go back to Vagina Island, appropriately coined by Kay, but my friends had no real interest in going again. About that time, I was living in my first apartment with a roommate during college and had a few friends back home. My college was only an hour and a half away, so the travel was no big deal and was always worth it when I pulled into my old driveway. I had been talking to a girl online and decided that she, my friend E, my roommate Jay, and I would meet up for the first time, and that I would take her to the island. It had a mystical pull to it, and those that I told didn't seem to believe me, so we agreed. Jay and I picked up E and eventually met up with A, who uneasily got into my car, but we all hit it off quickly. The drive was about 40 minutes, so we stopped to buy basketball shorts that we could wear to the river. E had my wetsuit from my trunk that I had carried around a couple of years because I was young and it was humorous, and we picked up a waterproof disposable camera. We get ready to go and make it to the island. I'm unfamiliar with the layout since Kay led the way, so we wandered around until we were able to find somewhere we needed to be. The first thing that caught my eye was that it was different than last time, just a few days before. The bottom of the lady is still there, but this time there is more, and it has fully grown in creepiness in an intense manner. Next to the bottom half is a full-bodied woman, lying in pale white cement, staring up at the sky. This immediately freaked us all out, especially after I had hyped up the vagina thing. She looked ghostly. She was wearing nothing but rain boots, and her nipples had been painted gold. We each shot glances toward each other and then to her. Our first reaction was that it was a real person, so we inched slowly towards it and swiveled the rain boot. She cracked and showed wire reinforcements under it. I let out a huge sigh of relief under my breath, and we continued to look around. I still had a weird feeling and joked about setting up a camera to catch this guy to see who he was. When looking through the trees to find a place for our imaginary camera is when I saw more. A vagina hung over from a tree just over our shoulders. At this point, we all start getting a bit freaked out and notice that there are candles by the chair. At the time, I couldn't remember if it was so caught up in the excitement the first time or if these were new too. All it took was for one of us to say, "Let's go," and we all followed suit behind. It wasn't quite the fun, carefree romp that I had promised. It wasn't long until the next afternoon I was sitting with E and we had decided that we needed to go back to the island. Perfect. Somebody as intrigued by it as I was called up a different girl, S. S was a small girl and wasn't too thrilled about going since we decided to go at 5 in the morning and see if we could catch the guy in the act. Upon packing, we grabbed a couple of baseball bats and set out into the dark woods to make it to the river. Once reaching the water, we realized how badly we had underestimated the temperature of the river when the sun wasn't warming it up. We felt the chills go through our legs and up into our chests. S wasn't having it. We took turns carrying her on our shoulders to keep her dry, which did nothing to make waiting any easier, but at least she was a bit smaller. We made it and pulled out a flashlight and began to go through the thick of it. I felt an ominous fear grip me but said nothing. I couldn't be the friend that was too scared. I had grown up being that friend, so this time there was no backing down. Everything that was creepy in the daylight was even worse when spotted by the moon. But we had made it. We stopped for a photo op before looking around. The first thing that caught my attention was the dead stare of the statue in the dirt. Leaves had fallen on her, and we kicked some of them away. She looked different though. My heart started pounding as I realized that, or you know what, had been painted gold since we were there yesterday. We crept closer and kicked away some leaves. once moving some. We noticed something that had been covered. There was a cement plaque next to her that read, "Equestrian." I inched away from the statue and tried to regain my cool composure. Had I smoked the way I do now, a pack may have already been gone. We all quickly looked around us to make sure that we were alone. There weren't any other sounds, but the two of us gripped our beds tight, hoping that we wouldn't have to save the lone girl trapped on an island at 5 in the morning. We caught it hanging from the tree again, and shivers climbed up each spine individually. This time we noticed that it wasn't the only thing strung up from a branch. Right over my left shoulder was a collection of feathers, what appeared to be some kind of charm, and a shotgun shell. At this point we all decided that there was no need to be the bigger man and said it was time to go. We had seen enough. This was all capped off by the fact that it was in just the short 20 hours we had gone. Somebody had been working. I think E and I had made up our minds that we were no longer alone on the island. We started looking for something to take with us, for a trinket that would go unnoticed, and scrounged around for a few minutes before I noticed a piece of bark next to the chair. On it was a very detailed picture of a vagina, and written in the back it said, "Looking for 40-plus-year-old models." We were all pretty satisfied and filled with fear by this and took off back across the river. We stomped through, carrying S on our shoulders and making a lot of noise. With each splash came the thought that somebody was behind me. The current of the water and the dark of the night made putting sounds to a specific spot. The cold water and the struggle of the extra weight made my knees buckle, and S and I toppled into the river. We had never been so happy to be back on the other side. A few months went by and he sent me a text message. He had been walking through a park by his college, about an hour's driving distance to the bank of the river. Wow, was all that the text message said. It had a picture attached. It was the same guy's handwriting paired with the same statement looking for models. Where E was that deep in the woods of a park known for hiking by college students. It was a college park. I remember my mind jumping when I saw that picture. I had thrown away the tree bark about a week prior, due to just that. It was tree bark. None of us had gone back for some time. We spent a lot of time sharing our story with people, but never telling them where it was pinpointed. An island in the river by the state park. Gave a wide variety of options. It was kind of our secret. By now it's 2012, and E and I no longer talk. I had talked up the island with my friend Kai from Colorado, and when she came to visit for a week, I knew what we'd be doing during one of those days. Pumped due to the fact that I hadn't been back in years, and so much more could be there, I sped to the park and we broke off the trail towards the river. The summer was very dry last year, and the tips of our shoes didn't even get wet. The entire river had been dried up for the season. It was the first time I'd ever seen the Platte River this low. As we walked toward the island, I'm talking it up. The sun is up, and I'm a bit braver, and we get into the thick of the woods. It didn't take long to notice that it was all removed. I walked up to it and saw that it was a bone of some sort. I assumed it was an animal and got closer to see that a dollar bill had been rolled up tightly and stuffed through it. I pulled the dollar out and we left disappointed. Until this day, I've never found out any more about it. E and I spent a couple of nights discussing calling the police or the park rangers and having them check it out, but we enjoyed our little secret. I kind of regret not calling, and curiosity continues to eat at me. The Platte River is not thin, and these statues were not small. We often bounce ideas back and forth about how we could get the cement there, or if he did his work on the island by simply hauling a bag of cement across and adding the water upon arrival. All of it will forever remain a mystery, and that may be the most difficult part about it, but also the most beautiful.